The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And you're with us on our ASEAN Daily. Grace, have you heard of Borak Arts?
I have, to be honest, since last year. Yeah, I really wanted to go there, but I had a performance.
Where is it exactly?
Festival. It's in Penang.
Oh, Penang. I guess they talk about arts because the word Borak is talk, right?
There are a lot of sessions. To be honest, I don't exactly know what Borak means, but I know as a whole, there will be a lot of talks, discussions when it comes to arts, and I think it's really, really necessary for, and not even if you're not an artist, you can still go ahead and you can attend the Borak Arts.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
To want to know more about what is Borak Arts, don't worry about it because we have Izan here, which is the founder of MyPAA.
Right.
So tell us more about Borak Arts, which is one of the early projects for MyPAA, right?
Yes. So hi, it's me again. Thanks for having me here. So Borak Arts, like you said, Arlene, Borak means to chat. So it's really to chat about the arts. And we started in 2013. So we're in our fourth year, which is really quite exciting to be able to beg, borrow, and steal to sustain it. But it was very important for us to keep this platform going. And Borak Arts this year focuses on bringing arts closer to home, highlighting countries of Singapore and India. And we're very excited with this theme because I think it's very bersesuaian to be speaking about bringing arts closer to home.
So this time, would you involve like any other countries?
Well, so Singapore and India is a country focus.
Oh, okay, for this one.
But of course, we have speakers from 10 countries involved at Borak Arts series. So you will see speakers from Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, India. There are also folks from Philippines, Ukraine, all coming to Borak Arts series this year.
I'm quite curious. I really need to ask this because this is one of your earlier projects. Like, why you wanted to talk about arts? Why don't you just do it? I'm sorry, just need to know.
That's really good. Of course, we do it. We are, but it's also part of advocacy process to advocate to relevant stakeholders, because you also must understand we are in a country where there are other priorities.
That's right.
And so we need to elevate the importance of the arts, but to do that we can't do it ourselves, so we have to bring our communities together, and our communities do not necessarily mean purely artists, but also from various levels and various backgrounds. And hence platforms like the Corporate Funders for the Arts or Borak Arts series to us are very strategic. They're not really tactical events. They're more strategic efforts to continue spurring partnerships and encouraging everyone to connect with each other.
You said there will be some updates from Singapore and India this time.
Yes.
Why these two countries? Because these two countries are so different from each other.
Yes. I know. I don't know what. We tend to curate the programs a year in advance. So we had an idea of that. Of wanting to involve Singapore. That's, part of ASEAN. I think very much well advanced compared to the other ASEAN countries in terms of its infrastructure and policies. But then we also looked at India, where there's a lot of community issues, and there are a lot of community leaders there who are actually going on the ground to be involved in those efforts. So they're actually the ones who are doing it. So, for example, our keynote speaker at Borak Arts series is Sayantani, and she's from this organization called Banglanata.com, and they actually work on fostering growth at poor areas, protecting women, children, refugee rights by using. So it's very interesting. You have that. You also have speakers like Joanna Sherman. She's from Bond Street Theater, USA, and she does a lot of work in global conflict areas in Middle East, Afghanistan, and she uses theater as a way to offer communities such as street children, rural women, traumatized populations, and refugees as a way to bring them closer and to heal. You also have Dara from FAR. FAR is a social enterprise circus.
Circus.
Yeah,
I
circus.
see.
So they basically have helped get children off the streets in Cambodia, children who have been exploited or abused, refugees, and they teach them juggling, acrobats, and now they perform as part of FAR, the group, and they have a place to stay, a safe place to stay. They have money to buy food, and these are just some of the speakers that you will be hearing from at Borak Arts series.
It's such a heartwarming introduction because it's amazing. I will consider them as a social entrepreneurs more like, because they solve the problems when it comes to social issues, but via arts. And it'll be very interesting to have artists going there to hear. It's more than art, actually.
Yes.
The values are
Yes.
so literally valuable.
Yeah, and I guess we were very strategic when we designed it, in the sense that we wanted to expand the audience beyond artists and the sphere of the stakeholders in the arts, but also involve those who are already speaking about social
Right.
impact, the social enterprise. It's such a key word at the moment, and I think flavor of the year for Malaysia as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's important to be inclusive and get them involved as well. So Borak series is a 2-day conference with a pre-conference program the day before, and there'll be keynote, panel discussions, workshops, pitch pad ASEAN, where artists will be able to pitch to festival directors and venue programmers, as well as roundtable.
So you're bringing the tech industry style of pitching to the arts industry.
It actually happens at various arts platforms, but may not be as common in our part of the world. But it is happening. It started last year. Great results as well, which I'll share with you in a bit. But you'll also get to be part of the roundtable tea sessions with funders and collaborators at the end of the program. So you get to move from one table to another. You get to meet people from Asia Europe Foundation to Asian Cultural Council. And these are international organizations who actually provide funding for artists to basically go and do their work.
When you mention all these big funders, right, I can only think about like works that are either organizational works or works that are so huge that you require huge funding. But what about small-time individuals where they only need like a small seed fund just to get themselves going?
Okay, so the names are big, but the grants are appropriate for what you've just mentioned. Grants would range from 1,000 ringgit to 50,000 ringgit, and this is what the funders will provide. And so you have not only them, but you also have folks from Think City who will be there, Goethe Institute, Asia Center Japan Foundation, Singapore International Youth Foundation, of course Magic, Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center will also be there, Sime Darby Foundation, who's basically there to speak to you directly about your
And they're
paperwork
also
on the
the
grants.
main sponsor for the event.
Yes, so they're one of the main sponsors for the event as well. Yay, thank you. Last year's Pitch Pad ASEAN, funny enough, provided really good results, considering
really?
it was the first time. Darwin Festival picked up a show from Philippines, Sipat Lawin Assemble, and it's presented at Darwin Festival a few weeks ago. Esplanade Singapore picked up a show from Cambodia called Bordel Saray from Amrita Performing Arts. Georgetown Festival picked up Moved by Padi by Ada Reza. Then you also have KMP artists from the US, which is a touring agent who signed up a Cambodian group called FAR, which I mentioned earlier about, and they are basically representing them in specific markets. So these connections are made at Borak Arts series, and hence why I say it's very strategic, because it's a platform to connect you with other parts of the world.
That's amazing. Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we will discuss further on Borak Arts and some of the highlight that will be happening in the Borak Arts.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back. This is great.
You're still with us at Durian ASEAN. So continuing our discussion with Izan, founder of MyPAA, and also someone who is very passionate on Borak Arts, one of the earlier projects by MyPAA. And this time they are doing it in Penang with the support of various corporate and also artists from not just in Malaysia, but also in all over Southeast Asia and specifically India and Singapore.
Yes.
So I want to go towards some of the highlights of Borak Arts off air. I think you told us a couple of stories of some of the artists, and they are not just any artists. They are artists with very interesting background and very grassroots background as well. So tell me some of them that you'll be inviting.
So kicking off the conference will be this gentleman from India who is basically a migrant worker in Singapore. He works as a driver, and he participates at a migrant worker center called Bangladesh. That is managed by AKM Mohsin, and every year they have a migrant worker poetry contest.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, the center is amazing. They do a lot of activities for the migrant workers using culture, and this poetry contest is one of their yearly signature platforms. And he wrote a poem and he won. So we are having him read his poem at Borak Arts series to start off the conference. Of course, we have other folks like Terry and the Kaz who will be showing an excerpt of their new work.
And also a teacher from Kedah.
Yes, teacher. So there is this lecturer called, he's affectionately known as Cikgu Man. Now, Cikgu Man is a lecturer, musician, and he loves to bask. He basked quite a bit, sampai dapat attention from the authorities who confiscated his saxophone and made him sign an agreement that he will never bask again in public because it was seen as mengemis.
Really?
Yeah, so I mean, how can basking be mengemis? So
even until now, like he cannot bask at all. Or what?
yeah, so this happened I think a month ago, and so what we've done is we've invited him to perform at a closing performance at Borak Arts series, which we are so excited because he said yes. So a lot of the artists are like getting crazy ideas like, let's go bask at the, and I'm like, okay, calm down, let's finish the conference first. But we're really pleased to have him.
The idea of having him is exciting at one end, but it's also a way to somehow dispel the myth that to appreciate arts, that means you need to go to a theatre or to somewhere closed door. You can always appreciate arts wherever you are. And basking, you can bask wherever you are in this case.
Exactly. I mean, we can sing in our showers, we can perform at home or at the streets. There are regulations and people are being confined in other parts of Malaysia. And that's something that we have to continuously advocate. And this is a discussion we need to have as well and see how we can bring.
Would this be part of the discussion in some of the topics that you'll be touched on?
Well, I think one of the discussions or one of the panel sessions is called The Power of Small Voices and Implementing Better Practices Within ASEAN. And that may be suitable for that. We will have in that panel that's moderated by Janet Pillay. She's the founder of Arts Ed Penang that does a lot of community arts engaged work. And you have panel speakers like Joanna Sherman from the US, who does a lot of work in those global conflict areas I mentioned. You will have AKM Mohsin, who is from that migrant worker center, as well as Gerald from Pusat Komas, who will also be speaking there. And I think it's very important that marginalized communities or senior citizens or handicapped, underprivileged communities also have access to arts. And I think using the arts, it's a way to make their own places, wherever they may be, comfortable and called home for them.
That's true.
So among all these ASEAN countries and also a few Borak series that we've had so far, what are the common concerns that were brought at the conference?
Oh, there's so many. I guess let's say, I guess the community is not shy in vocalizing some of these concerns. I think one thing is obviously funding, but funding is a default an issue in every sector, and access to this funding. Sometimes we can announce funding, but to access it it's a whole different picture.
I mean, especially if you come from very underprivileged environment, you don't know who's who, right?
Yes,
That's
yes.
going to be really tough. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to be connected to NGOs or intermediaries who actually fight for those causes to provide access to the arts. And they will basically do the vocalizing to the gods above on providing these access to the communities.
Mm-hmm. Borak Arts seems to be more on a community level of discussion, but do you also invite governments or corporations and people who are in the position of be able to fund these communities?
To a certain extent, yes, because our work has always been to break boundaries between the three sectors. So you will have a lot of participation, not just from grassroots, but other stakeholders like the festival directors and venue programmers. There will also be funders. There will be corporations. They are present. For example, Saim Darby Foundation, Magic, Hasanah Foundation, which is a foundation under Khazanah National Berhad, who is a strong supporter of Borak Arts series, will also be there. And these are people who basically advocate for the arts at a very different level. So that answers your question, I suppose, to whether there's going to be any continuity from the discussions. To a certain extent, yes. Government-wise, they're always invited. I think we have National Arts Council Singapore who will be there. We will have the National Department of Arts and Culture Malaysia who will also be there. So of course, and National Arts Council NACCA Philippines will also be present. So we always try to be inclusive because otherwise we're shock sendiri, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will take a short break. When we return, we will discuss on moving forwards in terms of talking about arts.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back, this is Grace.
And you're still with us at Durian ASEAN talking about arts. And this time is Borak Arts with Izan. Moving forward, let's just talk about how to bring arts to the local community. What is the value of Borak Arts that you want to bring to the local community?
Having traveled quite a bit, we have learned a lot at these international platforms. One and two is that we always meet our ASEAN artists everywhere around the world except for in ASEAN. So this platform was very important to connect the ASEAN communities. One and two is to actually expose Malaysian artists that there can be a lot more done with having an idea of building works for global consumption versus a local consumption. And third, that this platform is able to connect you to other parts of the ASEAN region or even the world.
So it's about connecting people.
Yeah.
I mean, Arlene, you off air, you mentioned about youth, and that topic is stuck in my mind.
Because we are young.
I feel so much older, but okay.
We're not that young. But talking about the generation gap, even when it comes to art scene, there is like this generation did this period of time, they did this, and then moving on to the next generation, we have a different trends. And of course, we do feel certain gaps in between. So when it comes to Borak Arts, do you also receive a lot of different feedbacks from different generations?
Oh, absolutely. You know what, which was really quite exciting, I think 2 years ago, Borak Arts in KL, we had a city update from Ipoh, Perak. And it was conducted by this gentleman called Jay from Project Rabak. So he was introducing Ipoh in his very, grunge hipster sort of way. And it was not a typical presentation. He had music overlaying his presentation. And the community really received it so well. I had international partners he was very keen on him as an artist. And it's very important to provide this platform to connect the younger generation to the established artists. I think one of the research we had done last year actually highlighted that the younger artists feel scared to approach more seasoned artists, because they feel that the seasoned artists may not want to provide advice or feedback, and that's really one of the things that they want. And
it's interesting you actually mentioned that. Sorry, I know you have a second point.
Okay,
I just want to emphasize on that point, because I think even in corporates or in more professional platform like mentorship is something that is vital in order for the older generation to somehow give back whatever they learn, experience or wisdom to the next generation. In the arts industry, is it also existing or it's not yet there?
Well, I think it is there, but it's not perhaps. At schools and institutions, you will always refer to your lecturer and peers, right, for advice. But within the industry, if I'm not part of the institution, for example, myself, I still receive a lot of feedback and advice from different mentors. But my mentors are from maybe producers or corporate organizations and policymakers from different countries, and I still find that very, very important, because it's a way of growing up and also gathering knowledge to complete myself in doing what I'm trying to do. For younger artists, or I'm sure different level of artists, it's still important to them. As long as you're not uncle, every moment is a learning process.
What are the other issues that you would like to highlight among the younger generation?
Well, I think the younger generation, they're very I tak nak angkat bakul sendiri, but one of the comments that they had made was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! You have all these people here, and it's just really getting to know everyone at one place." And as long as you are able to as long as you have the desire, you have the energy to go to speak to almost everyone, it's like something you've learned at school for one month. Building networks, understanding their thoughts, being mentored, getting connected to a different organization or different festivals, and it's maintaining that relationship as well. So you actually, on a yearly basis, you're able to sustain that via Borak Arts, because you tend to meet sometimes the same people or even make new friends.
From younger generations, what I see is, perhaps I'm wrong, but what they're lacking is patience and also sustainability in terms of not money, but in terms of the networking. Because of lack of patience, when they don't see the results immediately, they tend to give up so easily. Where they only see the outside of, the whole just presence of artists, the very glamorous part. But the hardship that they need to go through, many of them, they are not really ready for that process to go through.
Yeah, I guess it takes time, right?
But do you talk about this in the most frankness in Borak Arts?
Now, what has really, for Borak Arts series, it's really normal language, meaning that it's not scholars sort of discussion, very heavy duty language.
So, Professor, you're out of the door.
Professor, please try to speak in a language where everyone can understand. One thing I have learned, which we try to make sure at Borak Arts, is that when I attend some of these events, they make me feel so stupid sometimes, because it's so intellectual. And I can't understand.
Oh, in other words, jargony.
yeah, perhaps. And that's why I think whilst the theme and topics being discussed are relevant, we also make sure that the speakers and the moderators bring it to a level where everyone can understand, because you must also make sure you cater to a very wide audience. Our audiences are, some of them are mothers, some of them are PIBG teachers, lecturers, students, artists, CEOs of companies who are there to understand what is going on in the arts industry.
Besides language, what are the elements that you try to inculcate in Borak Arts that is different from a typical conference or forums?
Well, okay. One thing we've also learned what we've basically done is we've shopped around for conferences and taken what is best to be incorporated into this conference. So the conference will not be like your typical whole day talk until the end of the day, right?
But I thought it's Borak, right?
Yes, you Borak, but you break it up with showcases, you break it up with one-to-one meetings with festival directors and venue programmers, so that you are actually participating at different levels at the conference, in a one-to-one meetings, in a workshop, not just listening and asking Q&A. And I think maybe that has contributed to the sustainability of the conference. We have run this for 4 years, and MyPAA will turn 5 next year. So we're hoping that we'll come back to Kuala Lumpur next year. But we're also announcing this year for other countries or other intermediaries who wish to host it. So 2 countries are coming up this year to Borak Arts to speak to us about hosting it in 2018. So we're very excited about that, considering it's a local homegrown brand, to see Borak Arts series being hosted in other countries as a way to still continue connecting ASEANs in other countries as well.
Amazing. I think at the end of the day, I find Borak Arts very interesting. The fact that it tries to be different than a typical conference in general, and the fact that you try to bring the language to the masses, and that's also another amazing step forward. So where can we find information about Borak Arts?
Okay, so you can log on to borakarts.com and secure your tickets or get more information there.
Amazing. So I guess we will be going.
I hope so. I really want to go
You
this
should
time.
come. You must come.